Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Time is now 7 o'clock. Welcome to Tuesday the 26th of March's Planning Committee. Welcome to those at home. Welcome to our members of the audience and also our esteemed member of the press that we have here tonight. And also just to announce to the councillors that we have a new look Planning Committee tonight. For those that have in a sharp time, we haven't got the microphones in front of us that we usually have. So please, when you speak, can you speak very clearly and as loud as reasonably possible. Don't deafen us all, but the microphone's now picking up from the ceiling. So without further ado, move on to the first item on the agenda. Do we have any apologies? No apologies? Item 2 on the agenda is declarations of interest. Receive declarations of interest from members on the items included on the agenda tonight. Do I see any declarations? That's a negative. Item 3 on the agenda is minutes of the previous meeting. Are we content that that meeting's minutes are reflected here tonight in your papers? It's a true and accurate record. That's unanimous, thank you. That brings us swiftly on to the first item of business, substantive business tonight, is application for major development, Seabridge Community Education Centre, Borough Lane, Newcastle.
Chair. So this application is on the site of the former Seabridge Community Education Centre on Borough Lane. The principle of residential development, as well as the vehicular access from Ash Way, was established by the granting of outline planning permission for up to 55 dwellings at appeal in November 2020. So this is the site here, Borough Lane to the east, Araby Drive to the west, and Ash Way, which is where the vehicular access that's already been approved is from. That's here into the site from the south. So the application is for the approval of reserved matters relating to the internal access arrangements, the layout, scale, appearance and landscaping in respect of a residential development of 53 dwellings. So this is the proposed layout plan. So a mix of 2, 3, 4 and 5 bed dwellings are proposed, with a mix of detached, semi-detached and used style terraces. Dwellings would all be 2-storey in height and will be constructed from brick and tile. The scale of the dwellings would largely reflect the character of the surrounding area. Detailing would be simple and unfussy, and house types with bay window detailing will be positioned in prominent locations to provide focal points. I'll show you some of the house types now. So that's a 3-bed detached, a 4-bed detached, 5-bed detached, and then this is to show you an example of where interest is being added onto the side elevation of the property to give it interest at a focal point on the development. So the material palette comprises a mix of red and buff colour bricks, which is considered to provide an attractive mix in keeping with the local area. The existing mixed hedgerow and tree boundary treatments would all be retained and would be reinforced with a 1.8 metre high timber close boarded fence. Going back to the layout, the suds attenuation basin will be positioned at this point on the entrance into the site, just to the east of the main access road. So that would give an attractive feature on entrance into the site. The internal separation distances between the dwellings proposed would all accord with the recommendations of the council space around dwellings guidance. So in relation to waste collection, The majority of the internal roads within the site are to be constructed to adoptable standards and therefore will be serviced by the council's waste collection vehicles. However, there are 9 plots located off private drives where the vehicles wouldn't be able to travel, so the occupants would be required to take their bins to a bin store on collection days. So there's some properties in this location here, a couple more in this location, and this here. So the perimeter of the site is largely comprised of a mix of hedgerow and trees, all of which would be retained as part of the development proposals. However, within the site, 16 trees would be removed, 10 of which are category C classification and 6 are category B. And while the loss of these trees is unfortunate, in granting planning permission for the access from Ashway and taking into account the gradients of the site, it will be extremely difficult to retain these trees. Just for information, those trees are, I'll show you some photos in a minute, but sited around this location here, just near the access point and along here. So I'll just go through some photos now for you. So this is looking at the southern boundary of the site with the properties on Ashway. So all of these trees that are around the perimeter would remain. This is the access in of Ashway. So you can see to either side of the access are 2 of the larger trees that would be removed. This is kind of just near the access, looking across along the front of the site towards Borough Lane over in the distance. This is looking from further up the site, just to show you the differences in levels, but the site does slope quite markedly from the bottom up to from the access point up towards the top. So you can see there some of the existing trees, which, as we've said, will be removed. Again, this photo is taken just from the access point into the site there. So there are 2 trees just adjacent to that, and that's looking back from around the access point, looking over towards the northeast. And they are the 4 trees that are to be taken out across just to the rear of the houses on Ashway, over towards the southeast of the site. And just a couple here, just to show you the levels. So this is up, looking down across the site. Another one there looking over towards the entrance into the site, which is set down below the particular level at this point. Final one. Again, just looking from middle of the side, looking down towards Ashway.
Thank you, Rachel. I've been informed that we have one speaker supporter for this item, Miss Eleanor Lovett, who is also an agent for development. Would you like to come forward? Just to remind you, you've got 5 minutes to make your case. After 4 minutes, you'll be reminded by the side. You may be given your.
Good evening, Chair and committee members. I'm Eleanor Lovett of Claremont Planning. I'd like to thank you for inviting me to speak on behalf of the applicant Vistry Homes in support of the reserved matters application for 53 dwellings on land at the former Seabridge Centre, Newcastle-under-Lyme. Vistry Homes is a national house builder with a strong reputation for high-quality residential development. The site formerly accommodated the Seabridge Centre, which closed several years ago. The buildings were all demolished prior to the submission of this application. The site is within the urban area and is considered to represent a highly sustainable brownfield site, which both national and local planning policy suggests should be prioritised for redevelopment. This application seeks approval of the reserve matters following the grant of outline permission for 55 dwellings in 2020. That permission confirmed the principle of residential development as acceptable and also approved the proposed point of access from Ashway. This application, therefore, is only seeking consent for details related to layout, scale, appearance, and landscaping. The detailed proposals were refined following the application feedback from officers, whilst ensuring they responded fully to the principles established through the Outline Planning Commission. Further information has informed that detailed design, ensuring proposals fully address site constraints, including trees and topography. This has involved a reduction in the number of dwellings from the 55 envisaged as part of the outline application to the proposals for 53 dwellings that are being considered this evening. The road layout was also reconsidered in response to pre-application feedback, with the extent of private drives reduced, increasing the amount of adoptable roads. This ensures that the majority of houses will be located on adoptable roads that will be maintained by the Highway Authority and served directly by refuse collections. For properties on private drives, bin collection points will be provided in close proximity, with the applicant ensuring that residents will not have to drag their bins further than the maximum distances cited in Part H of the building regulations, and we've tried to reduce that wherever possible. The proposals will secure the delivery of 53 residential dwellings on this brownfield site within the urban area. It's comprised of a mix of 2, 3, 4 and 5 bedroom properties, including both open market and affordable housing. Homes will contribute towards meeting housing needs in Newcastle, providing family housing of a range of types and tenures to suit different living arrangements and respond to the local housing market. This commitment to delivering 53 homes in the short term should be supported, recognising the existing housing shortfall in supply in the borough and the inclusion of the Seabridge Centre as a committed housing site in the council's trajectory. Vistry is committed to delivering 25% affordable housing as part of this scheme, in accordance with the Section 106 agreement secured with the Outline Commission. The delivery of 13 affordable dwellings represents a significant benefit arising from this development. Vistry has an agreement in place with a registered provider who will take on and manage these affordable units following construction. During the course of this application, the applicant and project team have really worked collaboratively with the council to amend the proposals. This is primarily focused on changes to the road layout, fully address existing policy and guidance. There has also been a minor change to some plots and roof arrangements, ensuring that there is a positive relationship in terms of both privacy and outlook to the benefit of existing and future residents. In addition, the materials palette has been enhanced to ensure the development provides an attractive design reflective of the local area. The proposals are fully consistent with planning policy and guidance, satisfying requirements such as separation distances, residential amenity and design standards, as set out in the Space Around Dwellings SPG. In respect of trees, the applicant recognises the loss of existing trees as unfortunate. However, the constraints to the site and the approved point of access made it difficult to devise a scheme that would effectively utilise the site without removal of some of the existing trees. In any case, the proposals include extensive soft landscaping, including planting of over 60 trees, which will compensate for the loss. Each dwelling will benefit from the provision of car parking and cycle parking consistent with adopted policy and highway standards, and each dwelling will also benefit from provision of an electric vehicle charging point. Thank you. An area of public open space is placed in the northeastern corner of the site, where the shared footway cycleway connection through to Row Lane and the primary school will be provided. This will encourage walking and cycling for both existing and future residents. A further area of public open space is proposed in the south, adjacent to the site entrance via Ashway, while opportunities for incidental landscaping and open space are also utilised elsewhere within the development. Overall, the proposals provide a high-quality residential development that will bring back into use this vacant brownfield site through provision of much-needed family housing. The committee is therefore respectfully asked to approve this application for reserve matters so the site can be brought forward to deliver 53 residential dwellings. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Long.
Thank you.
Okay, over to councillors. Councillor David Jones.
Thank you. I've got questions for the officers, please. Just two questions. The first is, I noticed about the boundary and the mention of the installation of timber fencing. How will this work alongside the existing timber fencing we've seen from those photographs of the properties that back onto the site? Will the installed timber fence run parallel to that and create a strip of land locked in between those two fences? Or will the fencing just run where there isn't existing border fencing with neighbouring properties? That's the first question. And my second question is, I note on the site that there is quite a large green space provision that is in the adjacent areas to where the trees are going to be removed, the two quite large mature trees. Are the officers completely satisfied that this site could not be delivered with those 55 houses without removing those trees, or the number of properties, sorry, without removing those trees? I want to be satisfied that there really was no other option. Thank you.
Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Chair. I'll stand up because it's been a while since I did that. The microphone's tied to the desk anymore. I'm disappointed with the application. I note, and members will remember that this authority refused outline consent for this development, which was approved by the planning inspector. So we have no choice in relation to the outline elements, and the access, the point of access that we refused is there and we can't challenge it. I suppose we should be grateful that the number of properties has come down from 55 to 53. On the other hand, I do share Councillor Jones's concern, which is that as a layman looking at some of the documents in front of us, looking at the layout of this estate, it doesn't seem to me to be certain that it could have been delivered, it could not have been delivered, without retaining a few more of those trees. I would also like to ask officers if we can take a closer look at the eastern boundary of the proposed site, where I know a number of objectors with properties on Row Lane, who I represent in the Westlands ward, have got very significant concerns about the relationship between the proposed property on plot 43 and the boundaries and the back windows of their own houses. I note in our report, it does confirm that a number of those are primary rooms, that are primary principal windows. And I would like to see, if we have it, a section demonstrating the relationship between existing properties and the proposed one. Really, again, looking at it through the eyes of a layperson, I cannot conceive of why an electricity substation has been placed in the location it has, very close to the eastern boundary of the site, and why the property on plot 43 has landed where it does, considering all of the things that are around those things on the site. So can we take a little bit more detailed look at the eastern edge of this proposal? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Holland.
We'll have a look at the eastern boundary issue first and the relationship with the neighbouring properties. Share my screen. So these are some section drawings for the site, and the one at the bottom is the one that shows the relationship with number 42 Row Lane and block 46 on the plan. So I'll just show you on the layout plan. So these are the existing properties on Row Lanes. These are all bungalows. And these are the properties here that obviously have the greatest impact in terms of the relationship on those existing properties. So the one that we were looking at was number 42, which is this one here in the middle, and this property here. So The distances between the properties exceeds that's recommended in our supplementary planning guidance. And in particular, this property here, because that's the closest one, although it's a side elevation which doesn't have any principal windows in it. That one, the roof has been amended so that it's a hip roof and therefore slopes away from the property to reduce from the boundary to reduce any impact. But the distance between the side elevation there and the rear elevation of this property exceeds the 13.5 metres that's recommended within our SPG, and the distances here also exceeds that recommended within our guidance. These, as I said, these properties are bungalows, so this has the boundary treatments along there. There's fence and landscaping. So their windows, as their bungalows, are screened certainly in terms of from the ground floor windows of these houses. There is one principal window in one of these two properties at the first floor, but again, the distance between those properties exceeds that's recommended. So just go back to show you again. So that's showing you there the relationship. The proposed dwellings are, the land slopes up very slightly. It's very minimal, but that distance, as I say, exceeds that is recommended, and officers have concluded that relationship is acceptable. The case officer did go out and met with the residents of those three bungalows on site, and had a look very carefully at that relationship, and we are satisfied that it is appropriate and there wouldn't be any significant adverse impact on their level of immunity in terms of privacy or loss of life, etc. In terms of the trees, I think given the location of the access point, which obviously is fixed, and the location of those trees, and I do have a plan to show you a bit better here which trees are being removed. So this is the access point off Ashway, so that's clearly fixed. And these are the trees that are to be removed. So there's those ones across there, and then the next one we can see the four that I referred to and showed you on a photograph across the bottom there. I think to achieve the density on the site of an appropriate density for an urban site like this, and the density is approximately 28 dwellings per hectare, which is pretty average for this type of development and certainly not excessive. To achieve that density, and given the fact that the access point is fixed, and given the difference in levels that are quite difficult and need to be carefully worked, that I do think that it wouldn't be possible to retain those trees. I think that was another question.
The boundary.
Yeah, I don't know for definite, but I don't think there would be a proposal to put a fence in if there's already a reasonable fence there that just have a look at the shown on a boundary treatment plan. While you're waiting, if you want to carry on with the questions, and we'll have a look and try and find.
Councillor Beer.
Right, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I also want to think a little bit about layout, but for different reasons. And this is something that was mentioned in presentation we were given, but in a somewhat circuitous fashion. So, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the officer said that 9 out of 53 proposed dwellings would be served off private roads, would have to pull their bins out from time to time. That doesn't sound so much, but actually when you do the maths on that, that's best part of 17%. In other words, 1 in 6 houses, in fact, will be subjected to this. We were also told that the distance that people would have to drag their bins was less than the maximum permitted distance. I would be grateful if the officer would remind us of that distance, and indeed, looking at the plan that we saw, the house that the officer referred to when we were talking about it being adjacent to the properties on Road Lane seemed to be the furthest away potentially in that respect. It would be interesting to know what that distance was. And of course, I'm sure members will be aware, we need to double that distance because you don't only have to take your bin there, do you have to bring it back again as well. Is there any reason why these other roads aren't adopted, to save money for the developer?
I can't answer that question. I don't know why it's been laid out as it has. But what I can do is just share my screen and show you the distances. Just look a bit more at some more detail on that. The one here, you can see these red rectangles. There's 1, 2, and 3 there. So the 9 properties that would have to put their bin in those bin stores on the day of collection are the ones that are at the head of this cul-de-sac here would use that one. This one here would be used by the properties there, and this one here would be used by these properties. So yeah, as Councillor Fee referred to, this property here is the one that is going to have the greatest distance to walk to take their bin to the bin store. So the maximum distance for this one, plot 43, is 29 metres. But for all of the other properties, it ranges between 7 metres and 17 metres. Now, the speaker referred to building regulations and set out within the relevant building regulations relating to waste and bin stores. It refers to there should be residents shouldn't be required to travel more than to take their bin more than 30 metres. So in terms of that document and those building regulations, it does comply with that guidance.
Councillor Beer, do you wish to come back?
No, except the number of properties seems to me high, and I'm disappointed that the developer doesn't see fit to provide provision so that people can have refuse collected from their curtilage.
Councillor Brock.
Just a question about the dispersal. Well, yes, the dispersal of social housing within the plot in the area. Just concerned about the number of maisonettes there and the fact that, first of all, obviously, reservations were expressed about the number of maisonettes that were about to be put there, and concern about the fact that social providers tend not to prefer this kind of property because it restricts the kind of clients that they can put in them. And then the claim is from the developers that they have had discussions with registered providers, and said which, who have made offers to take up, no detail there, to take on the units subject to planning permission being granted. I think that's one of those things that's easy said than done. And obviously, the fact that there is compliance there, obviously, up to a point with the appropriate requirement for the Section 106. What mechanisms are in place to check that this is happening? Because it's one thing to make an offer to social providers who will then turn around and undertake, in theory, to take on these properties and to legitimately give them to social tenants or shared ownership or whatever the scheme happens to be. This is very laudable if it happens. I think the issue is that given the expense of providing this kind of accommodation and the diversity of accommodation described here, which does sound compliant, it sounds laudable, and it sounds as if it's very good for the area and for the development itself to have a social mix. What mechanisms are in place to make sure that this happens and that that somehow halfway through it isn't suddenly decided that the providers with whom there have been discussions, though no undertakings, have enabled the developer to comply with this, and that there aren't any swervings of their responsibilities. Thinking from the point of view of the quality of accommodation in the area and the very laudable social mix that the area has purported to accommodate.
Thank you, Councillor Brown.
The affordable housing and how that is governed is very carefully set out in the Section 106 that was approved with the outline consent. That document is very detailed in terms of setting out the nature of the units and how they remain affordable in perpetuity. So the registered provider is governed by what is set out in that Section 106, which prevents it being abused in any way. Sorry, just going to make sure, just found a plan that shows the boundary treatment. So just bear with me. So this is the plan showing the different types of boundary treatments, which are shown here in the so you'll see that the blue is 1.8 metre high timber close boarded fence, as is the pink is large lap fence, and then the green is timber close boarded fence with concrete posts. So it looks on here, it's difficult to tell really, but for example, along here on Borough Lane, it's showing that there's a hedgerow along that boundary, and so the fence would go inside that. Seems to be showing that the fence going along the entirety of the boundary, so that does suggest that it would be going just on the inside.
It does look to me like it's running parallel at points
Yeah.
and creating channels
Yeah.
between existing fencing. And I have concerns about that reduces access to be able to maintain the hedgerow. But also where you have those thin channels, it becomes a haven for the detritus from roads, from mist bin collections. They just get down in there. It's difficult to remove, and then it becomes a hot spot for rodents and vermin.
We've got a condition recommended, I think, relating to boundary treatment. So we could have a look at as part of the details that are required to be submitted to improve that condition.
Okay.
That's good.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of questions, but could we just start by assuming a question that I think Councillor Holland raised? I don't think it really was answered, and that is about the substation.
Oh, yes.
I know from the documentation that we've been provided that at least one resident was concerned about. Members may remember Landhouse Way development up in Northampton was concerned there about the substation, and in fact the developer was able to relocate it in such a way that residents were satisfied. Is there any chance of that happening with this development? Well, the two questions are very quick, Mr. Chairman. How many masonettes? I wasn't sure from the details. And could we be told the location of the cycle and pedestrian way? Wasn't quite sure where that is on the plan.
So there are 2 masonettes, both are 2 bed. The pedestrian cycle way is here. So connecting out onto Row Lane. So that was a requirement of the outline consent. So there's a condition on there that requires the submission and approval of the details of that. In terms of the substation, I don't know whether there's a particular reason why it has to go in that location. Really, we could only justify requesting it to be recited if we had a substantive reason to be concerned about its location there, which obviously don't have any concerns. But yeah, whether we could ask that as, I don't know whether we could condition that as part of the application. I think we would have to. It would be too much to put a condition on that said that that substation needed to be relocated elsewhere, because that would be too substantive of a change to require by a condition, in my view.
Could we ask you screening about from relocating it? Less than that.
Yeah, I mean, that's quite common for substations to have some sort of landscaping around them to soften the impact. It's that thing on the nothing shown on that, the landscaping. Again, I'm afraid I can't comment any further on that.
Particularly Councillor Gordon in reference to that item of the substation, but are you content that possibility of a condition to screen it? You can't get to secure a relocation.
Okay. I think that may be the least worst option.
Any other councillors wishing to speak on this item? Councillor Bright.
Thank you, Chair. Just carrying on really from Councillor Fear's points. If we're not trying to save something, you know, in an existing protected tree or something along those lines, why can the site not be designed as such that all houses can be serviced by bin wagons? I just can't quite get my head around it. It's not so much of a question, maybe necessarily more of a comment or a naivety. I just can't quite understand.
I think having a mix of adopted highways and shared drives gives it softens the development, because by having adopted highways, they have to be to a certain spec, so they have to be a certain width, they have to have pavements of a certain width, they have to have street lighting, all of those things have to go in to be for the highway authority to adopt it. Whereas having a mix of the shared driveways is quite a common way, an urban design aspect really, to soften the appearance of the development and to make it look less engineered. So that's kind of the justification really for having that.
But the areas we're talking about are like 3 dwellings, are they not? So how soft can the extenuation of a few meters mean something? As I say, it's not necessarily maybe a question or a statement. But thank you.
Councillor Holland. Councillor Crispin.
Thank you, Chair. Reflecting on what we've heard, I have to say I'm convinced that other alternatives are available in terms of design and layout. Going back to the very start of the meeting, we heard you're only allowed to have an interesting house or a bay window if you happen to live at a visible nodal point on this estate. If you are the resident on plot 43, you have to perform a 60-metre round trip to take your bins out. Your amenity is much worse than is average, and the amenity of properties on Row Lane is impacted in a way that cannot be remedied because of the proximity of the dwelling in plot 43. You can put in as much boundary treatment as you like, and the only boundary treatment that would be effective would be one that makes loss of light worse for those residents. And I believe that the highway standard exists for a reason. It is safety. We have street lights for a reason, which is safety. We have construction to a certain quality for accessibility purposes. And everything about the design and the layout of this proposal is troubling to me, Chair, and it's not one that I feel like in support.
Thank you, Councillor Holland. Councillor Chris.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just following up on Councillor Holland. I mean, the one at number 43, you've got to do a couple of trips there. So you've got your recycling boxes as well. So you're dragging one bit out, then another. And for all the people that are going to be living there, this is going to be quite a trip for them that you're putting on. And some of them aren't too bad, but they're just a trip across the road. But I think it's becoming unreasonable. It's at some point when you could just redesign it to get a pickup very close to your front door, I think in most of these cases.
Thank you, Councillor Chris. Councillor Williams.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I agree with my colleagues about the distance people have to pull wheelie bins, and I've been asking this question quite a few years since an estate on my patch was built with private roads. And really, good, Mr. Chairman, if we could get an answer to that, not this big development, but for the future. And this seems to be happening. It's every planning, state planning process that the private roads, I still can't get my head around it. But because people are buying properties on roads that they've got to maintain. And in a lot of the cases, no lighting, but on the gullies, they've got to maintain. So could we try to find out an answer for that from people in the industry to some kind, yes. And also on the point of the levels, if I can say with the slab levels, because they give you some movement of line, will the slab levels be higher than the one in on the Ash Road estate? And also, well, I think, Mr. Chairman, some of the gable ends I've noticed are so bland, it's unbelievable. Where those gable ends be overlooking, training circles, if they're close in proximity to the next door neighbour, but if they can see them as you go on, and properties built in this particular area, I think they deserve a better and a better development and a better quality of design. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Williams.
I'm just going in response to your query about levels.
Ashway, it's not Ashway.
So this is the site here with the three sections drawn through it. So the section that is labelled A there, you can look at, and it shows you the relationship with the dwellings on Ashway. So you can see how across the site the land slopes up from the bottom to the top, and should be able to pick it out there that there's quite a bit of cut and fill required on the site because of the difference in levels. So you can see here at this point, that's the existing ground level, and that's going to be raised up there and to have a retaining wall structure there. And then you can see at other points where the land is being cut down to try and obviously make it appropriate for development. And then showing you here on this is the middle section, which is showing through the Suds basin, but you can see there that the land is being put into at that point. And again on the bottom one, see there that the levels are being reduced at that point quite significantly. The site. So yeah, in answer to your question about the properties on Ashway, there will be a retaining structure there, which is the same height as the rear boundary treatment of the properties on Ashway. And then, so what they will then see is a 1.8 metre high fence, and then the gardens of the properties and the dwelling setback there. Show you on there. So yeah, that's it at that point.
So they will just be higher than the ones on Ashway.
Yeah.
And how high would you say? The you, Chair?
4.2 metres. Well, that's the total height of the retaining structure. And with the boundary fence as well would be a total 4.2 metres. So the increase in levels would be about 2.5 metres, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but come back, Mr. Chairman, it was quite the levels do rise from Ashway to the summit, as you might say. And, you know, it would be nice if one of the consultees have said that, you know, that adds to the attractiveness of the site. And I suppose it's easy for the developer to flatten their site off, but at the cost of the neighbours. So I don't feel very happy with that at all, Mr. Chairman. That they've got to change the levels on that side. Thank you.
I mean, the principle of the development of 55 dwellings on that site has been accepted.
Yeah.
So with that, the inspector who allowed that appeal was clearly aware of the difference in levels and accepted that to achieve a development of 55 dwellings on that site, there would have to be a change in levels across the site. So it's difficult now for us to raise objections to there having to be changes in levels on the site.
Thanks for the explanation. Thank you.
Councillor Bruce.
Hi, I'd like to echo the concerns of my colleagues about the houses, the bungalows on Row Lane being overshadowed by two-storey houses at the eastern side of the development, which is actually already higher than the gardens in Row Lane. Would it be possible, if we have to have 55 dwellings, would it be possible for those dwellings to be single-storey? In which case they wouldn't be blocking the light or overlooking the gardens of those properties or the windows of those properties.
Well, not as part of this scheme. We've got before us a development of 52 dwellings that doesn't comprise bungalows, two-storey dwellings, and we have to consider the scheme that we've got before us. Your officer's advises that the relationship between the proposed and existing dwellings meets our recommended standards of distances between properties, and therefore we don't consider that we could substantiate a reason for refusal on the basis of impact on residential amenity when it complies with the guidance that we have.
Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Chair. I know we've been going on this for a little while now. I wonder what our officer's advice would be if I was to suggest deferring a decision on this application in order to explore further with the applicant the siting and the treatment of that substation, some of the issues that Councillor Jones raised about potentially introducing gaps between fencing and the boundary in the site, and whether that can be addressed by changes to the design. The extent of the adopted highway and testing whether it's possible for a scheme to be brought forward that moderates the number of properties that are accessing or receiving their bin collections off a private drive, and also the amenity issue that I mentioned about the dwelling at plot 43 and its impact on other dwellings nearby. So what will officers say to me if I was to suggest deferring at this stage? And also what advice would officers give if I was to consider moving refusal of this application on those grounds?
Thank you, Councillor Holland.
Well, if I address the second part of your question first of all, and about moving refusal on those grounds, your officer's view is that the scheme that you've got before you is acceptable. Going through the issues that you just raised there, amenity, impact, and I think you're referring to the distance to take the bin, weren't you? For that,
Yeah, and the highway issue speaks to that, because if the more of it was adopted highway, they wouldn't have to drag their bins quite so far. And that's an example of how I think that the dwelling at plot 43 really is shoehorned into this development.
But my advice on that is that we don't have any policy within our local plan that says it has, you can't drag your bin more than 10 metres or anything. The only thing that is set out in any sort of legislation is the building regulations that I refer to, and that talks about 30 metres being anything up to 30 metres is deemed to be an acceptable distance. So if we were to refuse the application on the basis of that, I'd be struggling to see what we could hang that reason for refusal on, and I would be concerned that in the absence of any development plan policy to refer to, that we would be at risk of being unreasonable there. Siting of the substation, again, your officer's view is that the substation in that location is appropriate. We could condition it to require landscaping of that, and I think subject to there being landscaping there to kind of soften its appearance, it's clearly not going to hide it completely. Again, I'd be struggling to see what policy we would attach to that that would substantiate a reason for refusal. The boundaries again, I think we discussed that we could condition that. We have a recommended condition asking for details of boundaries, and we could look at that issue as part of that and ensure that there isn't going to be the creation of a gap that would create problems that members are concerned about. So I think my advice to you both in terms of deferring it and refusing it is that your officer's advice is that there isn't any justification to do either. But clearly if members have a different view, then I think it would be preferable if you were to choose deferring it over refusing it, because I really would have concerns about how we could draft reasons for refusal.
Over to you, Councillor Holland.
I'm interested in hearing what other members have to say on that.
Councillor Hutchins.
Yeah, I'm not happy about the 9 dwellings that have got to take their bin up to 29 metres. Houses on an adopted road, if there's only one person in the dwelling and they have mobility issues, they can ask for an assisted collection, which is great. Newcastle Borough Council offers assisted collections to people with mobility issues. So the group member would go down your garden path if the gate's open, collect your bin, take it out, put it in the truck, and then pop it back for you. We do not do that on unadopted roads. So the houses that this developer wants to settle needs to basically make it clear to the people they will never get their bin as an adopted collection. So if someone does have mobility issues and they're in an unadopted road house, they're going to have to pay somebody to come and take their bin. Maybe that's something that we don't need to worry about, but this is 2024, not 1954. I just don't see why unadopted roads is even an option in 2024 in Newcastle-under-Lyme Borough. And so I kind of go with deferring with Councillor Holland to say, can we check to see if there's anything that we can possibly do to try and see if there's something we can alter, change to reduce the number of dwellings on an unadopted road. That would be good. I'd be happy with that. Also, I'm not happy at losing the 14 trees. There is a mention on page 14 about they're possibly planning to plant up over 60 new trees. That does give us some biodiversity net gain, which is good. Would these 60 trees be trees that are already 6, 7, 8 foot high, or are we talking little whips or little saplings? But just like, and if it does get forced on us that we have to accept this proposal, can we put in something to say we demand that we have 6, 7, 8 foot trees and not little whips or little saplings? But the main thing I don't like about this application is the 9 dwellings on an unadopted road. I think it's just unacceptable and something that Newcastle-under-Lyme Borough Council should fight against with all developers.
And just in response to the query about the trees, yes, absolutely. The report does acknowledge that it's considered necessary to condition full and precise details for the proposed planting scheme to ensure that a variety of species are planted, as well as trees of differing maturity, to ensure that some trees have an immediate visual impact to mitigate the loss of the trees removed from the site. So yeah, we absolutely can and will require that within that condition. Just going back to the bins again, just to reiterate the point I made before, that it is only one property that is 29 metres. The other 8 are between 7 and 17 metres, which isn't a significant distance. And again, I'm struggling to see how we can substantiate concerns in terms of any policy basis that we have.
Councillor Bryan, Councillor Holland.
I was just going to say that just because it says that it's okay for it to be 30 metres, doesn't mean that we necessarily think that's right. Like I said earlier, there's nothing here that prevents the site from being designed as such that they are roads that can be adopted, and I just can't put my name to agreeing to something where we're asking people 17 metres could be a long distance if like councillors say that they've got potential mobility issues and would struggle. I just can't put my name to that. I did say it.
Councillor Holland. Councillor James.
Chair, I move deferring this item for a decision at a later meeting for the reasons that I gave before. I do so in the presence of our officers who've given that advice and the applicant's agent who's in the room tonight. I hear what our officer says about seeking sound policy reasons for refusing the application. I completely agree with that philosophy. What I would say, again, in the earshot of everyone who's in the room, is that matters of design are matters of judgment, and we, as members of the planning authority, we as voting members of this council, are entitled to exercise our judgment. So I think many of us feel very strongly that there are elements in this scheme that could be improved on. It is possible for us to achieve something that we're willing to vote for. In terms of the quantity of houses that are off the adopted highway, in terms of other issues that we've discussed tonight, and I know that the applicant is open and accessible to reason and to discussing it, because changes have already been made. A hip roof has been put in one property as a direct result of issues that were raised by obviously land objectors to the scheme. So I move deferral, Chair.
Thank you, councillor Holland. I'll take one more question from councillor Jones.
I was just previously, before councillor Holland moved that, just going to add my voice in support, so I'll second councillor Holland. I think what we've established this evening is that there are a number of matters that we as a committee do have concerns on, that we do feel will impact the amenity of this development. And I think, given councillor Holland's comments as a local ward councillor that the applicant has been quite open to working with the council, then perhaps by deferring this and the applicant having opportunity to work with the council, then a scheme could come forward that's more palatable. I would point, one thing that I did want to raise regarding the tree planting, I'm loath to see large, very mature trees taken out in order to be replaced with trees that we know a large proportion won't survive. And that's a large proportion won't survive on the assumption that they are maintained perfectly in that time period. And I have severe worries when we take out these large mature trees that the 60 we replace them with 10, 15, 20 years from now won't be 60. There'll be significantly smaller number of trees there, and that for me is a net loss that is just not palatable. So I would urge, in looking at this design, where trees can be preserved as much as possible.
Thank you, councillor Jones. Okay, so we've had it proposed from councillor Holland that we defer this matter. The reasons stated by councillor Holland. Got there? And we've had it seconded by councillor Jones. I'll now move to a decision. Members in support of this, please raise that in terms of the deferral. Okay, thank you. Those against? Those abstaining? That's quite clearly moved to a deferral. Thank you. Moving on to the next item of business this evening is application for major development at 7 Victoria Street, Newcastle-under-Lyme.
Thank you, Chairman. This application completes full planning permission for the demolition of 7 Victoria Street and the creation of a 3-storey apartment building, which will be comprised of 12 apartments. 5 of these will be 2-bedroom properties, and the remaining 7 would be 1-bedroom only. So, for context, the site is located on the corner of Victoria Street and the A34. It's located approximately 330 metres to the southeast of the town centre of Newcastle. So there's no objection to principle to the residential development of the site, given it's a brownfield location within what's considered to be a highly sustainable area of the borough. There's also been a previous residential scheme approved at the site back in 2008. So the building itself would have an L-shaped formation, so it's based onto both Victoria Street and the A34. As you see on the left-hand drawing, parking and cycle storage, along with bin storage, will be to the rear of the building in the courtyard area and will not be visible within the street scene. So cars would be able to drive through an opening in the building that links directly onto Victoria Street. There's also a small communal garden, which is the big, located on the edge of the site that faces onto the A34. That would act as a small visual buffer between the development and the highway. The top drawing shows what the proposal would look like when seen from Victoria Street. The right-hand section of the building would feature a dual-pitched roof arrangement and would be constructed of a mixture of traditional red brick and vertical zinc cladding and would have a more contemporary appearance. The southwestern section, by contrast, which is on the left-hand side of the top drawing, shown on the bottom drawing, would feature a flat roof arrangement and would be entirely constructed of red brick. So the exact colour of these external materials would be controlled through planning condition if the application was approved. The height of the building at its northeastern point is similar to that of number 9 Victoria Street at 8.7 metres tall. However, the roof would not stagger in height towards the A34, but would run at the same ridge height. This roof arrangement is considered to be acceptable due to the slope and topography of the site, and will allow the building to appear as a prominent but not dominating feature within the street scene, particularly when viewed from the A34, which is considered to be an important gateway area to the town centre. So, a section of projecting detailed brickwork, which is this darker patch on the bottom drawing, has been added into the proposal. The new aluminium coating has been incorporated into the design as well, and a vertical stack section of brickwork below the ridge of the building has also been added in. So these additions are welcome from a design perspective and will add a good level of detailing and variety into the proposal. So these are the views that they have of the rear elevations of the site. So you'd only really be able to see these if you stood in the rear courtyard area. But these wouldn't be visible from the main street scenes of the A34 or Victoria Street. We do have some 3D mock-up drawings which show the scale of the building, context for the surrounding properties. This picture is what the proposal would look like from one of the higher sections of Victoria Street. So the edge of 9 Victoria Street can just be seen on the right here, the traditional brick below. The second view, which will be from Leach Street, which is to the southeast. For context, the A34 would be to the left. So subject to conditions, which will require details of all external materials to be submitted for approval, the overall massing and appearance of the proposal is considered to be acceptable. There's no concerns regarding residential amenity. However, the recommendations of a submitted noise impact assessment would need to be tied to any permission through these competition. In respect of parking numbers, the proposal would offer 6 spaces. It's recognised that this is below the council's parking standards, and this weighs against the proposal. However, the Highways Authority have raised no objections to the proposal, given that the site is located in a highly sustainable location with good access to the town centre and bus station. And it must be recognised that there's some, albeit limited, street parking available on Victoria Street. Some limited weight can also be given to the fact that the previous application for 2-bedroom dwellings, which was granted back in 2008, offered no off-street parking provision. So, in the absence of any objection from the Highways Authority, given the location of the site, it's not considered that refusal on parking grounds can be sustained in this instance. So, some photos of the site. This is looking from Victoria Street down towards the A34. So it's this darker building here, the one to the left, which would be demolished. This is from Lee Street. And the A34 is just to the left. From the bottom end of Victoria Street. This is the view from the A34. So this building here, this is line 4, which is the 3-storey apartment building. The proposal will sit slightly lower than that. It's another image from the A34 as well, facing up towards Victoria Street. With regards to developer contributions, the proposal did trigger the need for an open space contribution. However, a viability assessment has been submitted with the application, which demonstrates that the scheme would not be viable with any Section 106 contributions. This assessment has been reviewed by an independent valuer, which comes to the conclusion that the viability assessment is accurate. So, to conclude, the development is considered to be a sustainable location for new residential development. It's considered to be an appropriate design, not result in any significant or adverse impacts on residential amenity or highway safety. The application is therefore brought to committee with a recommendation for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. Before I open it up to members, I've been made aware that we have a speaker on this item to support for the scheme, Judith Edgley, hearing on behalf of the applicant. Maybe here this evening.
Okay.
You have 5 minutes to make your case.
Right, you are. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank
Before
you for your
sorry,
time.
before you
Sorry.
go on, can you speak up, please?
Oh.
We can all hear. Cheers, thank you. Sorry about that.
Okay, coming up. Thank you for your time. Please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Judith Edgley, and along with my daughter Faye and grandson Anthony, we are the applicants of the project at 7 Victoria Street, Newcastle. My grandson Anthony was due to speak. Unfortunately, he is not able to attend this evening's and sends his apologies. We are here tonight to emphasise our passion for the project. We live in the Newcastle area, near to the town centre. We work and socialise in the local community in Newcastle. My grandchildren attend the local schools. Our family business has been trading for over 50 years around Newcastle and Stoke. Our aim is to provide high quality, good sized homes. The plans you see presented today are the result of a very involved planning process discussed with the Newcastle Planning Department, the Highways Agency, a transport consultant and local residents. Also, an independent review was done. The final scheme produced is a combination of all the feedback we received, which was implemented by our architect. The external design has taken influence from other recent successful building projects in the local area. We're going to be using similar high quality material for ours. The building will blend in well with the surrounding scene and landscape, and is within the easy walking distance of Newcastle Town Centre, which provides plenty of local amenities. The scheme we have designed has been created with the goal of improving and benefiting our local community. The transport statement conducted requested 6 parking spaces for the development. We have provided 6 spaces as requested. The transport statement also demonstrates that there is enough available on-street parking to accommodate any additional parking needs. I would like to emphasise this project has been designed with Newcastle and our community in mind. Thank you for listening to me. I hope I have been able to provide you with some background knowledge of this project. Many thanks.
Thank you.
First time I've ever done it.
Okay, over to you, councillors. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I will start by saying that that is probably the best statement from an agent on behalf of an applicant I have ever heard. Well done. And I will carry on by saying that I do have some things that I want to raise about the application. It's no way personal, and I do encourage local businesses, and I was really heartened to hear that. I have two major concerns. The first is on parking. And I'm glad that that photo's been left there, because I would like the officers to point out to me where the vehicles park on that road. If they're parking on street, where are they parking? Because that's showing me a road that's already full with cars. There's only 6 car parking places for 12 apartments, and that's assuming that there's 1 car per 2 apartments. Officers have said that that doesn't meet our minimum requirements. I know we've received input from highways. We often receive input from highways. I'm afraid that's a desktop study and has no awareness of the parking pressures in that area. There are significant parking pressures in that area, as I'm sure Councillor Brocky, a councillor for the board, will be able to attest to. That area is very pressurised for parking due to the nature of the terraced housing, but also due to the fact that a large volume of patients or staff who work at the hospital park outside of the hospital because either they can't afford the car parking charges or it's just not available to park on. I know a number of us have attended appointments within the hospital and been stuck in that situation where we've had to drive round and round and round and round and round to find any kind of parking. So I'm afraid there are parking issues in that area, and I disagree with the highway statement. The second thing that I have concerns about is the independent valuation of the 106 agreement. I'm a bit stretched to see how £63,000 contribution would make it unviable. If the development is unviable with a £63,000 contribution, I'm scared about the viability of the development as a whole. That really does concern me. So I guess part of my question on that would be this independent valuation that's occurred. Was it a qualified QS? Did the QS have a full open book? And if they did, what percentage threshold did it cross in order to mean that it's no longer viable? The 63,000 is a very small amount when it comes to viability of a development of that nature. And if not making that contribution, if making that contribution would render the site unviable, that puts question the whole development's viability to be able to resist external financial pressures. So yes, those are my concerns that I'd like to hear from the officers about how maybe that could be addressed.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Fear.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I to echo Councillor Jones's opening remarks, in particular in this respect, it is very nice to see someone with an engagement in the project rather than a professional agent come and speak to this committee. That being said, like Councillor Jones, I'll go on in a similar vein. I too have concerns in that regard. Certainly, I worry about the amount of viability, which the councillor has spoken eloquently about, and I'm not going to replicate what he says. As regards to the parking, again, this is an area curiously that I know quite well, and I would say that it is very, very heavily congested for parking, and I'm worried at the provision here. I note that not only does this fall beneath our own standards, but, and this is where I'd just like a little bit of clarification. I mean, I note the transport statement, and I'm looking at page 25 of the report at the moment here. Says the transport statement does all of these things. This equates to 7 cars being owned by future occupants. A total of 6 parking spaces are currently proposed. In other words, this application, it seems to me, does not even meet the requirements of its own commission transport statement in that regard. And I think that is a matter for some concern. I'd also, however, like to add to what Councillor Jones said in a rather different direction. I personally am very concerned about the proposed design of this building. In particular, I am concerned about the large amount of metallic cladding which is going to go along the street scene in Victoria Street. Now, were that cladding to have been placed on the frontage facing onto the A34, I would have to be mindful of the student development on the other side of the road and the mixture of stuff there. However, and again, I'm grateful for the photograph remaining there. As one can see, in fact, Victoria Street is entirely a brick constructed street. The large flats on the corner there are traditional red brick. And this, to me, is the intrusion of a completely incongruous feature along that street, particularly incongruous, I would suggest, from turning in from the A34, where you'll see this stretch of metal going up in front of you on one side of the road. I very much feel that that needs to be remedied, and were that not to be the case, I personally, for design reasons alone, would be minded to vote against this application.
Thank you, Councillor Beer.
Yeah. I'll start with the viability assessment. So we do check the credentials of these valuers. In this case, we're confirmed they are qualified and work for a company that works on a national level, in essence. So it's not done by someone who would perhaps have close connection with the applicant or anything of that nature.
Yeah, can I just come back on that? My question was, are they a QS? Because a QS will be qualified to look at the entire build project, or is this somebody who's a property valuer? Because there's a big difference in assessing viability. There's somebody who's a QS can tell you the viability or how much it will, whether the figures submitted are justified for a build of that type. A property valuer will tell you what the value of those properties are. If it's a property valuer, it's taking the assumption from the applicant. If it's a QS, it's not taking that assumption, it's independently verifying it.
The company that have carried out the viability assessment, so they've assessed the financial information that had been provided by the applicant, and they are RICS qualified, so that's chartered surveyors, and the report conforms with the RICS professional standard of financial viability in economy, so it does. We are satisfied that it's robust in that regard.
Thank you.
Yeah. Just going with the profit margin as well, we're normally taking anything that's less than 20% profit to be unviable financially. Yeah, so I'll start with the parking provision. So obviously I know that there is a shortfall, so they're stating their own details of one parking space. That is weigh against the application. There's a number of factors why we've said that it is accessible on a high-risk terms. I mean, the main one obviously we have had the consultation from the high-risk authority who haven't raised any objections, and they've taken the stance that because of its proximity to the town centre, those parking standards can be slightly relaxed. But in addition to that as well, there is a bus stop down outside. The sign is very close to the bus station itself. Can't give a massive amount of weight to it, but there's a previous application of the site which would have required a number of parking spaces as well, but that didn't provide any, albeit that was prior to the national planning policy framework being adopted. National planning policy does state that proposals should be refused if the impacts of development on the road network would be severe. I think severe is the word that we need to consider carefully with this one, but we don't feel there's enough harm in this case to warrant the refusal on highways grounds. With the materials, so the zinc cladding is obviously, it will have some contrast to what's in the surrounding area. It's predominantly red brick and render properties of a traditional appearance. I think in terms of the actual use of that material on the roof, that would probably be quite sort of similar, at least in colour to other properties nearby. I think whether the style of the property is trying to do it itself, it's obviously quite aware of being a contemporary style.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, though, I'm correct in saying, aren't I, that the zinc cladding is not merely on the roof, it's on the top story of the building.
It is, yeah. It was covered the third story, facing elevation onto Victoria Street. So you can see this section here. Cladding where it's lined here, built on this bit, and this sort of recess section here as well. I mean, I perhaps say that the zinc cladding is a secondary material when seen against the red brick. It doesn't cover a large proportion of the building, it just covers some of it. We've taken a stance that will add some interest to it. We don't feel that section of zinc cladding would cause enough harm to warrant a refusal on design grounds. But it is accepted that there is some conflict there with the local material palette.
No, except I simply disagree with the officer, and this isn't a very prominent part of the building. I mean, it's were this to be at the base of the building as a sort of dado line, I think it wouldn't be noticeable. I think the architect here, for whatever reason, and again, I would disagree with those reasons, I suspect, has decided that this should be a prominent feature of this building, and I think that simply clashes with the screen seen on Victoria Street.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor.
Thank you, Chairman. I must say my heart sank when the officer described the design as contemporary, because I couldn't see how it would fit that particular location. It was sad to see yet another flat roof, and I can only echo Councillor Beer's comments really on the cladding. One question I did want to raise, and I don't think that's been raised so far, that's the garden. Good to see a garden area. But I'm a bit concerned, who would be responsible for maintaining them? Given its location, it's bound to be quite a lot of litter. And if it isn't maintained, it could easily become just not particularly attractive. On the parking, officers, I mean, am I right in thinking that the same sort of question cropped up a couple of months ago with the Jolly Potters development? And didn't we agree there that we would go along with the short? And if that was the case, are we not being inconsistent if we don't follow the same decision this particular day? I am very concerned about the decisions that result in more off-street parking. I think eventually the authority has got to come to some sort of firm policy decision on that. But at the moment, it seems to me to be a bit inconsistent to approve one application and say, okay, we accept the shortfall, and then to, shall I say, perhaps turn down another one, saying, no, we can't allow a shortfall. I'm just saying, I think we need to be consistent.
Yeah, just with the Jolly Potters one, you are right. We took a stance that the shortfall was successful in that case, just given that it's a sustainable location. That's close ties to the town centre. So you are right again saying that we can't be consistent with the way we approach that. It is difficult. We have parking standards that are very outdated in many respects, and we're much more reliant on comments from the Highways Authority than anything else. Decisions.
Councillor Brock.
Sorry,
thank you, Chair.
Sorry, just a quick one, just on the garden, it'll be a management company with have control of that after permission granted.
It's the problem.
Thank you, Chair. There's obviously policy issues about it, but clearly the people who park on the streets, therefore, as Councillor Jones said, for reasons other than the fact that they're residents or they're parking there at certain times of the day when residents come home from work. For every car that parks there, including the ones that park on the pavement, because it's impossible to get two lots of cars up there. You know, it's not particularly, if they're committing an offence, that's a different matter, but the problem is there's so little parking availability there, and the terrace houses, they weren't built for people with cars, but people have them. But colleagues have already mentioned this, and I'm not going to repeat it. There appears to be an acknowledgement of the fact that the parking is inadequate, because there are measures within the development proposed to promote non-car modes of travel. And they say there's a bus stop and there's places that people to put their bikes, and it's, you know, this will all compensate for the fact that people use cars. So you might get the bizarre situation where with 7 one-bedroom dwellings and 5 two-bedroom dwellings, some of which are sort of up there, the residents can all go on their bikes or, you know, catch buses. But people who just want to go and park up there like it's the Wild West, like they always do, can go around parking on the roads outside the flats. It's the regulations are there for a reason and clearly do acknowledge the safety concerns. Because when somebody parks on the road, they've got to pull out of it, haven't they? And then they've got to go onto the A34. I think that's where it differs a bit from the Jolly Potters development, because this is technically really up a side street. It's not on the A34, it faces it hardly. The parking that will take place will spill out above Victoria Street and go into the streets adjacent to it, which will, of course, cause a safety issue that no regulation could possibly control, since it's not policed. And as a ward councillor, we have, well, myself and Ruth Wright have tried to get parking restrictions placed on those roads, which can be policed. And the problem is that we've raised it with the county council, we've raised it with Stoke, we've raised it where there's an awful lot of sympathy for residents in these areas, particularly that one actually, about even disregarding the development and the impact on parking then to get parking restrictions. If the parking restrictions were there and the resources financially and in terms of manpower was there to police the parking, then it would release spaces for residents to use. It becomes a planning issue though when you're sort of almost whistling at the dog, because you're saying that people shouldn't be parking there, but they are. How terrible. So these people who are building this building are building it and saying, well, okay, we don't have too many parking spaces, we're actually below compliance, but we've put these cycle areas here and we've put, you know, there's a bus stop. And yet there's no policing of people who are preventing, if you like, the potential residents in this development from parking. So it's partly a legal issue that's got nothing at all to do with planning, because it's people not doing what they should do. But the nature of the area is such that it would be very difficult to impose restrictions which would enable the residents to enjoy the limited parking there is. The other, I mean, I won't labour the point of parking. I think everybody on all sides of the room understand that this is a severe issue in Town Ward. In fact, some weeks we can, you know, we get complaints about very little else because people become very aggrieved. And I think if this development is going to enhance the lives of residents around there and obviously enable people living in to live enhanced lives, in the absence of suitable restrictions on parking, which is another matter, you know, it's like talking in two separate rooms. We like the restrictions so that what parking's there could be availed of by residents. But in theoretical terms, there's the availability of parking. But in real terms, people being villains that they are and needing to go places where the parking's too expensive, that's what happens. A minor thing that I did notice is the play facilities, because there is a sort of requirement where you've got 2-bedroom dwellings particularly for play facilities for children, which of course it's not considered a development which meets the need for that requirement to be met. It's considered not reasonable or necessary. But given the fact that there are 2-bedroom dwellings there, which could attract families or would encourage families as opposed to single persons to live within the urban part of Newcastle town, the fact that there are play facilities in the area, lots of them, but they've got to go across the A34 to get to them. I'm not suggesting that a development that size would have adequate play facilities, but there are open spaces around there. And this would appear, if you like, to impact on what spaces there are. The communal garden sounds like at least a sort of a nod towards making it a little bit more green and a little bit more humane. But especially given the metal stuff, what is that about? It's helped, but there's a maintenance issue, there's a littering issue. There's the fact that it's near a lot of communal centres where there is already a littering problem and a problem with maintenance of such areas that are there anyway. And, one is concerned that the good intentions of this development to have mixed housing, 2 and 1 bedroom, there are certain compensatory design features. It's putting it in a place where it's almost impossible for it to fulfil its objectives. It's not being against development there, or indeed anywhere else where it's viable, and it probably is an improvement on what's there already, which isn't exactly the most, conducive surroundings to having people take pleasure in where they live. But without putting suitable restrictions and suitable allocation of parking, I suspect that in real terms and in practical terms, although this is speculative, it will not fulfil the excellent objectives I think it has. So as ward councillor, I would say that I am very unhappy, and I suspect the residents would be unhappy as well, unless a lot of amendments were made and a lot of acknowledgement of the fact that everybody is not going to be able to use non-car modes of transport. Depends on where you work. It's a nice idea, but given that this is for families as well as single persons, it's not the best way of going about it, in my view. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Jones.
Chair, in the spirit of Councillor Holland's previous really quite spectacular and impressive intervention, I think given that the applicant is a local applicant, that rather than move refusal, which I might be minded to on the basis that the car parking provision doesn't meet our standards. I note my colleague's comment about the Jolly Potter. However, to maintain consistency, the Jolly Potter is located adjacent to multiple car parks, public car parks that would be available for car parking. Given that we have seen from the officer's photos that there are significant concerns about the impact that this could have on car parking on that street for residents, and given, as Councillor Brockie has raised, about the green bit that is facing towards the A34, that I have similar concerns will become a site for attracting detritus and various other things. But perhaps we defer and allow the officers to have this conversation with the applicant. And perhaps maybe the applicant could look towards that green patch to provision some additional car parking. Whether that's plausible or not, I don't know. But I think that we should give the applicant opportunity to amend the existing designs to see if they would be palatable to us as a planning committee.
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, the communal garden area could potentially be changed to something else. The actual size of the site itself does make it difficult to achieve the required levels of parking potential that you could perhaps get another 2 spaces or 1 space in there. there might be a design issue in respect of bringing the building too far forward. In respect of building lines set along the A34 that's shared by the Cherry Tree and Lime Court, but it could potentially be done. But yeah, we'll take a bit of rethinking.
I mean, I would be happy with the situation enabling the applicant to work with.
I think that would be preferable than a refusal.
I need to check with councillor Beer, because I think you raised initially, that
I can't.
grounds to refuse. I'm just going to check with councillor Beer as views still on this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hear what Councillor Jones says, and I'm very sympathetic to this. I think we're not talking about a large faceless body at this point. I would still myself hope that if we were to vote for deferral, that the applicant would also think carefully about the cladding on the top story. I think there are other ways of making the design interesting, and the inventive use of brickwork. Traditional brickwork, I think, would be a much better alternative in the circumstances placed there. But were Councillor Jones to move deferral, and we've got grounds for movement deferral, I would be minded to support him.
Thank you for that clarification, councillor Beer.
I don't think there'll be a problem with change materials, but we've explored options before and changed some quite a lot of significant alterations already. So I think that would be quite to address.
Councillor, would you like to give way to councillor Jones?
Absolutely.
So we've had it deferred, councillor Jones, and councillor Beer has seconded that deferral. All those in favour of the proposal, show of hands, please. And that is unanimous. That item is deferred. Thank you. Going to item 6 on the agenda, application for minor development, open markets, High Street, Newcastle-under-Lyme, Newcastle.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah. So this application seeks full planning permission for the relocation of 5 market stalls and public realm improvements on High Street in the town centre of Newcastle. So the context, the site forms part of the High Street that extends from the Guildhall towards the south east. The site also falls within the town centre conservation area. Just for some more context, here's a photo of the site looking north towards the Guildhall. This view looking south towards where the main cluster of existing stalls is. So the principle of market stalls in this location is well established, and the creation of public realm upgrades in the town centre location is considered acceptable in principle. So there's not considered to be any immunity issues, and the Highways Authority raised no objections to the proposal highway safety grounds. Therefore, the sole issue to be considered is the design and layout of development and the impact of conservation. So this is the existing layout, the market stalls. Currently concentrated to either side of the High Street. The majority are located in the south eastern area. So this is the proposed layout. So there'll be 2 stalls which will be relocated to the northwest on either side of the existing row stalls, which you can see it's just here. There's one at this end, one there. There's also 3 stalls to be relocated to this section here. So there'll also be a number of temporary stalls located in the northwest. So again, the south section of the scheme, a new landscaped area will be located within the centre of the High Street. This will be surrounded by temporary stall areas. There's also 4 parking spaces to be located to the south of the site. 3 new benches are also proposed. A new area of red tarmac is also proposed around the landscaped area, which would match that use in Queen's Garden, on that side. So the proposal has the benefit of concentrating the siting of permanent stalls toward the upper part of High Street, whilst also allowing the remaining area then to be used flexibly on busier market days. The council's conservation officer has been consulted on the application and have welcomed the removal of the fixed market stalls, which they consider create a negative and cluttered appearance. They know that the development will create a more attractive open green space in this part of the town centre. It is considered reasonable in this case, however, to request full and precise details for the new benches to be secured through a condition. So, subject to this condition, the proposal is not considered to have any adverse impact on the character and appearance of the conservation area. It helps to improve the appearance and functionality of this area of the town. The application is therefore brought to the committee for a recommendation for approval.
Thank you, Charles. Just drawing members' attention, there is 2 supplementary reports to this item. Address some of the comments which are in the main body of the report. Over to members for comment. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'm really pleased that majority of stores are going to be centred around the Guildhall. Many years we've thought, both myself and Councillor Jill Williams, that the bottom end is the south end. Stores have not been occupied, and moving them more makes it more attractive with the stores that are being used. I just question on the grass areas, will it be synthetic grass or real stuff? Thinking of maintenance, Mr. Chairman. The other one is on the pop-up, again, getting into detail, pop-up stalls. Who will supply them and who will pop them up? And the only thing that worries me really is on the materials, picture of the materials, they show a curve, a grey curve. I'm concerned, is that, where's that curve going to go? I've looked on the map, I can't see it. Or is that just a part of the materials that the manufacturer is showing on the sample board? You find pictures of the tile floor, and then is there any curbstones going in? That's the point I'm making. I think if people with problems eyesight, visual impairment, to all of that service at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor.
Reasonable flat anyway.
Thank you, Councillor.
So just some small issues, defence, but otherwise, like it'll be good for the town. Thank you.
Just on the grass, so it wouldn't be a sort of grass area, but more of a planted area, really. So there certainly wouldn't be any sort of synthetic grass or anything like that. It would all be natural plants.
Just say grass, into the grass areas. Yeah. On the planters. Yeah. I was just thinking of maintenance, and that's we're adding to the visual impact of the test, and yet we're putting stuff in that could attract rubbish and nothing worse than seeing an area that's not maintained properly.
I think from looking at the details on the plan, it's not going to be synthetic grass, it's going to be all natural.
Natural stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, because it refers, as you say, to a raised lawn area with planted and lime trees. And the curving that you mentioned that's going to surround the that central area. That's what it's going to enclose that central landscaped area is going to be curved.
It'll be a curved area, it'll be all flat. So
no, it's going to be the same sort of height, the same height as curbing
Yeah,
elsewhere.
the road curving, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm concerned with that because it's a flat area and people who are vision, think it's a flat area and then we also come up against the curve and, you know, people tend to be quite, feel quite safe walking on a flat area and then all of a sudden they're there at, in that flat area and come against the, that's my only real concern. That point.
I think you would have to have some sort of curbing to have it edged to enclose it.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I mean, I made the point, in Leek, you've got the road all flattened surface. But as you go through the town, you've got chamfered roadway from the footway to the road. And see people fall over that. And I'm like, well, yeah, there's like probably on the high side that falls over, you know, just like 2 or 3 inches and people go down. So it's again putting something in that, in my view, it should be a flat area right through until you get onto the main highway.
I think the area though, it's not envisaged that you would walk through it. It's you would be able to walk through it, you would walk around it.
It's the grass area, that's what you say.
Yeah, but the size of it, it's not big enough where you.
Yeah, we
would
should have said
look
that.
to
But that's
walk
one feet,
into it.
what, how many? 150.
Curbing, yeah.
Yeah, it's all right, yeah, I quite get what you're saying, but, yeah. All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Pearce.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Like Councillor Williams, I welcome this in principle. I think it will tidy up the market and the stores will be concentrated in a particular area. Another thing that strikes me is actually having been done one of these sort of walks through the town last summer for our 850. Is actually we sell ourselves short with the high street. It is really quite a spectacularly broad street and really it's got a really rather magnificent sweep as one goes from the sunken garden up that way. I think removing these stalls at the bottom end there actually helps to emphasise this feature, which is quite a, if not unique, quite a distinctive feature of our town centre. I sort of hear what Councillor Williams says, but I do think obviously having this as a slightly raised area, one thing there, the issue of maintenance, it was completely flat, the temptation to drive over it, dare I say ride cycles over it, not that I would do that, causing damage to the turf would be greater. And I think most people confronted with a grass area in the middle of this sort of esplanade, if that's what we want to call it, would expect it being of a slightly different height from the surrounding roadway. So although I see there's a potential hazard there, I think it is actually quite a low one at the end of the day. I am slightly concerned about the benches. It would be nice to see proper traditional benches, not some sort of weird concrete things drop down at that juncture. But beyond that slight concern I have, I very much welcome this application.
Thank you, Councillor Pearce. I've got a comment to make myself actually, that's in terms of the parking, the nipper parking there. I would personally like to see one of those parking spaces be nominated as a disabled bay with the requirement width disabled people need to get in and out of the cars. I think in terms of equity, I think we've got a duty to provide that in the centre of town. That's been my only additional comment, but I agree with you, Councillor Peel. I think it is a welcome transition for the centre of Newcastle, and I think it will actually serve to encourage people to use it more and encourage the flow of people to use it. So any more speakers on the site? Councillor Gordon.
Just a quick question, Chairman. I'm assuming that the seating that's currently outside Poundland would go.
Good question.
It's because the stores a bit too. Yes.
Yeah, looking at the plans, you said it would go, yeah, I don't think it could be done unless you observed it.
And just check with the condition, did you say?
I don't see any reason why not. It should be fine.
So the absence of any more speakers, do we have a proposer?
I'm happy to propose acceptance of this application.
Thank you, councillor Peter. I'm happy to second that. With the exceptions of the conditions that I've outlined. Are we happy to support that recommendation? Please show hands to support that, please. And that's unanimous. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That item is passed. The last we've made a decision. That brings us to an old favourite. Agenda item 7 on the agenda. Land at Doddleswell, Bentley. Do we have any updates to what is printed?
No, we don't.
Thank you very much. I have no urgent business identified to myself tonight. Any urgent business? Which kind? Urgent? Disclosure of information, exact information. That's not applicable. I'm not aware of any. That just leaves me to say thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your indulgence tonight. Have a safe journey home. And for those watching at home, hope you've enjoyed tonight's presentation of the planning committee. Have a safe journey, everybody. The signs and